Noah Eagle, NBC Sports play-by-play, Big Ten Saturday night, NBA. He's going to call the USC Notre Dame game as well. He's a busy man as we make way for Noah Eagle on the program. So Notre Dame and USC, that'll be Saturday at 7:30 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. And then 3 days later on the call for the NBA on NBC, Steph Curry and the Warriors against Luka and the Lakers. That's a busy schedule there. But you grew up with your dad having a crazy schedule. Like, at what point did you realize what your dad did and that he wasn't going to be home like normal dads?
I figured he'd be home all the time. He's not home right now? No. I think he might be doing a game in like Boise at this point. If there was a Little League game he could do, he would sign up for that. He was gluttonous at times. But no, it was great for me because I think it was just expected and normal that I would be in the living room and pop on the TV, and there he was. When I was 4, I just said, oh yeah, that's just my dad is there. And then the best part was he did have the summers off because he wasn't a baseball guy. He got offered, I actually didn't really know this, many years ago, he got offered certain baseball packages. And he grew up a huge Mets fan in Queens from Forest Hills, and his dream was to do the Mets as a kid. That was always what he thought he would do. And so I think he got offered however many Mets games, and he went to my mom and said, this is the deal. And then, I grew up, and she goes, Ian, I've really put up with a lot in life. This is going to be a no, a hard no at that. The one moment that we have together is the summertime. And if you're going to take that away, it's going to be a problem. And he's a smart man. He listened.
When did you realize this was your calling?
Probably about 13 or 14. My dad has a great story that he went to his father, who was an actor, stand-up comedian, performer, and he went to him at 6 or 7 years old and said, I want to be a sportscaster. And his dad said, well, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be a sportscaster. And the problem was he said it with a lisp. He said, I want to be a sportscaster. And his dad said, well, that's what you're going to do, but you got to get rid of your lisp. And he said, what lisp? So that was a beautiful story because it bred confidence in this young man. I went to my parents about the same age, and they said, oh, well, what do you want to do? And most kids, it's cowboy, astronaut, something fun. I said, I want to be a TV dentist. And instead of them saying, well, that's what you're going to do, it was, what is wrong with our child? What is a TV dentist? Can we get him checked out? So for me, it took a little bit longer. I'd say 13 or 14.
Wait, what is a TV dentist?
I think Dr. Phil filling a molar is probably the intersection I was thinking of. Now on TikTok or Instagram Reels, that exists, I'm sure, somewhere. But for whatever reason, I thought people would want to sit at home on a Wednesday at 1:15 and watch a crown get installed. That does not exist, or at least not yet, I should say. But for me, 13 or 14 years old, I'd gone with my dad to enough games at that point and been around him and gotten to meet some amazing people around him that I said, well, this is pretty cool. And, I wasn't going to be the tallest of people. As you could see, I'm pretty vertically challenged. So this was the next best bet for me to stay involved in sports.
I made the mistake of calling you Ian Eagle.
Yeah.
Like, you look exactly like your dad.
The crazy thing is I'm adopted, so that's shocking that it just worked out that way. That's like when dogs morph into the people that bring them into the house. It's definitely one. We sound very similar, look very similar. I'm about 2 inches taller, so we'll
wow.
Yeah, we go back to back on a daily basis. I post them up in the driveway, and there's the similarity aspect. The one good thing though is I'm glad at least you said Ian. There are people that come up to me and they say, Ian, I love you on the Nets. I'm like, thank you so much. If you mess it up twice, that's a deeper problem.
How do you capture a moment when, as a play-by-play guy, you're going to walk into this stadium Saturday, the Olympics, Lakers, Golden State next week, but you got to capture it too, but
Yeah.
you can't try to overshadow it. So it's kind of a delicate tightrope walk. How do you do it, or what's your approach?
Tightrope is probably the right term. I like to say it's a constant dance as well of feeling. And someone asked me this. We did the whiteout game a couple weeks ago, about a month ago now, which is crazy. And going into that game, the environment is going to be amazing. The crowd is going to be a sea of white. It's going to be deafening noise. I don't think I've ever heard a stadium that loud. And this one right here gets real loud. And so that says something. And so you don't want to take away from that because you're trying to find the perfect words or you're trying to make sure that you leave a stamp on it. A lot of times it's going to do that for you. And so I know a game like this with so much rich history and tradition and star players and star coaches on either sideline, a lot of the pictures are going to tell that story. And the worst thing I can do is try to jump all over it. But I think you want to make sure that you have a period that ends every call. And that was something that was really drilled into my head is you need to finish with an exclamation of some kind, some level of punctuation to at least just give that soundbite, at least give that moment some more levity than maybe it would have had before. But that is, to your point, it's tightrope. It's not something that you can go in there and plan. I don't think I've ever necessarily sat down and said, if this happens, I'm going to say this, because the game always dictates how you're going to feel when it's all said and done.
But you start to look at these moments that you have, and I'm wondering when you're growing up and you're listening to your father, and it may sound crazy to say this, but did you pattern yourself after your dad, or did you have somebody else that you wanted to broadcast like?
It's a great question, and I'd say naturally, just because I was, eating chicken parm next to my father on a regular basis, naturally you gain a lot of that stuff. And what I mean, it's more than just sitting and watching him call a game. A lot of it was being around him at the dinner table, being around him interacting with his crew that influenced me a lot more than how I broadcast. And the thing he always really made sure that I understood is the best broadcasters aren't just the best X's and O's, so to speak, of play-by-play. It's the most well-rounded people. What do you know outside of the sports you're covering? Television, movies, music, arts, history, current events, all of that stuff is important. And so making sure that you blend all of that, I thought was key. But there were certainly broadcasters that influenced me. I thought Mike Tirico, my colleague at NBC, the most versatile broadcaster in the business, someone who could be an elite host and an elite play-by-play guy. I thought that was incredible. I said, okay, how do you emulate this? Bob Costas, the eloquence that he brought to every broadcast was special. Mike Breen, you talk about elevating moments in the biggest moments. If you hear bang, you know it was a huge deal. A double bang now is even bigger. And you go down and on. The Dave Pashes, who I think don't get enough credit. Dave Pash, I think, is just one of the best broadcasters in the business. And now even the younger Adam Amin, Jason Benetti, guys like that who are just so solid. So you take bits and pieces from all of them. But to even go back to your previous question, my dad, I just, the calls that stick out to me are not the ones of the biggest moments. They're the Antonio Brown kicking the punter and him just being on top of, kicks a man. You want those. Those are the ones that always, and obviously I grew up in New Jersey watching all of the Nets games. And so they're just random Nets moments of Jerry Seinfeld sitting courtside and Joe Johnson hitting a game winner in double overtime and him being ready with, that was real and that was spectacular. That's what I like, So that's the stuff that influenced me more than anything else.
We're talking to Noah Eagle. He'll be on the call with Todd Blackledge. It'll be tomorrow night. And rain in the forecast, Notre Dame, USC. Do you care about the conditions when you broadcast?
Well, if you're asking if I physically care, not necessarily, because I know my hair is protected in the booth. It's the key. I worked hard on it this morning, so that's always the key. But I care in the sense that I want the game to be at the highest quality. And sometimes, look, you can make the argument that that's real football, right? Of how do you deal with the elements? How does a quarterback deal with a wet football? All of that stuff matters, and so it does factor into the story of the game. But you want it to be at the highest quality, highest level. When we did, and I apologize for bringing this up for Notre Dame fans, when we did the A&M game earlier this year, it was picture perfect in terms of the forecast, in terms of the offensive execution on either side. And so you want a lot of those highlights as a play-by-play guy. But at the same time, you want a great game. And sometimes the ugliest games turn into the all-time games.
It's always weird and I don't know how you take this, but when you hear a play-by-play guy and they give you credit for not saying anything.
Sure.
Like you did a great job, you laid out, you let the natural sound come through, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to what a play-by-play guy does, but hey, I did a great job, I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Like Chris Berman during the Cal Ripken game when he broke Lou Gehrig's all-time record. I think Chris didn't say anything for 15 minutes. You did a great job on that game. Yeah, you didn't say a word for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It just sounds weird.
Yeah. But it goes back to what you asked earlier about finding that balance between when's the right time to say the right thing and when's the right time to say nothing. And honestly, the one guy I forgot to mention who really has influenced me a lot is Joe Buck, who I think early in his career got a lot of flack for probably laying out almost too much, and he would admit that. But now he's found, in my opinion, the perfect balance. And the reason that people say all the time, it sounds like a big game when Joe Buck is on it, is because of exactly what you just said. It's very minimalist. He's going to give you exactly what you need, but nothing more. And then he's going to allow the crowd and the photos and the sound, the cacophony of noise to do the rest of the talking for him. I think that is powerful, incredibly powerful, because if you really think back to all the great moments of your childhood, of sports fandom, of just sports history, a lot of it is exactly that, where a broadcaster will punch it with one or two lines. The rest of it just, you feel like you were there. And that's what the goal of watching sports is at the end of the day.
We think that these stadiums, they are all heated and they're covered and you don't have to worry about the elements. But you did an Army game at Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And your partner, Todd Blackledge, who did play professional quarterback.
Yeah.
It was an open air broadcast booth. And here's a guy who played professional football, but he seemed to be kind of wimpy in the booth there.
I'm not going to say that Todd looked like Tom Coughlin purple face, but he was on the road to purple face. You know, that's how you know it was cold out that day. Look, I think we've gone Charmin Ultra Soft in the booth because we just expect the conditions to be very tame. Even cold weather games, look, you keep the window open and you feel it, but you're covered. You're not dealing with overwind in both directions, and that was different. That was definitely a unique experience. The dead of winter, really, I guess, beginning of winter, towards the end of November, and it was cold. I think you guys were around, so you could probably remember. It was, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees, and we were out for the entire game. And I think the reason that it was probably a little worse was because Notre Dame pummeled Army. If it's a close game and it's cold, you go, okay, the adrenaline's pumping. Once it becomes a 30 or 40-point game, it feels a little bit different, and that was certainly that. But yeah, he was not doing well. I think he turned to me a couple times during breaks and said, "Why are we out here exactly? What's going on right now?"
Great to see you.
You too. Appreciate it.
He is Noah Eagle. He'll be on the call tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern on NBC and Peacock, and then you got the NBA on NBC, and it'll be Steph Curry and the Warriors with Luka Lakers as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll come back. We have our play of the day right after this.